From the Alvin and Rosalie Sarachek studio, PBS Kansas presents Positively Kansas.
It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, Kansas has been home to many historic firsts. But did you realize that Wichita has been called the birthplace of modern football? Discover how this 1905 Wichita team helped change the game forever. And meet the great-great-grandson of one of its stars. Also, you're never too old to try something new. Just ask Tilly Schaefer's. She'll play a song for you. Plus, we'll visit this historic hotel, which is haunted by the ghosts of the Old West. I'm Sierra Scott. Join us for those stories in Kansas Wild Edge on this edition of Positively Kansas. Those great moments in history that shape the future can often be traced back to remarkable people. Such was the case in 1905 when a group of gutsy, athletic young Kansas men gained national attention. The fruits of their efforts can be witnessed each autumn in stadiums and on televisions across America. Jim Grayway uncovers new information about the trailblazing team that made Wichita the birthplace of modern football.
It's been outstanding. Johnson
in Kansas and across the country, football reigns supreme.
And the touchdown for Anthony.
It is America's most popular spectator sport. But the game we know today has its roots in a dramatic turning point, a pivotal moment that forever changed the sport. And it happened in Wichita. Mitchell Sayers is part of that story.
I found out about 3 weeks ago when I got a call from my grandfather, all ecstatic.
Recruited from a small Ohio high school to play for McPherson College, Sayers recently discovered a surprising family connection to Kansas and a landmark moment in football history. And what he found out seemed too amazing for his teammates to believe.
I mean, I didn't believe it either when I first heard too, but yeah, they definitely think it's cool, and they'll definitely push me to live up to it.
To understand what Sayers is living up to, we have to go back to the late 19th century when early football was a dangerous affair.
Football at that time was a very brutal, physical game. You had the flying wedge where the linemen interlocked arms and just plowed ahead, steamrolled ahead, and it was just all brute force. And of course, at that time, there was virtually no padding or protection for the players.
Just bring along the ambulance and call the Red Cross nurse. Then ring the undertaker up and make him bring a hearse. Have all the surgeons ready, therefore they'll have work today. Oh, can't you see the football team are lining up to play?
By 1905, the rising popularity of the game was overshadowed by a horrific statistic. 18 young men were killed, 150 seriously injured in that single season. The game was in crisis. President Theodore Roosevelt, who was a fan of the sport, stepped in. He believed football had potential, but it needed reform.
And so he was the one who initiated some movement to change the rules and bring about something that would make it less physical, and the forward pass was the idea that came up that would spread teams out, and also there might be a little more excitement, a little more scoring.
But who would dare try this radical new play? None of the big schools were willing.
Roy Kirk was a student at Fairmount College, Wichita State, who seemed to have a mind for promotion.
Earlier that same season, Kirk had gotten the Coleman Company to provide gas lanterns to make possible what may have been the first ever football game played at night. Reviews of that were mixed, but a game with the forward pass, now that had the potential to get widespread attention and transform the sport.
So Roy Kirk heard that President Roosevelt was looking for someone to play this experimental game with the forward pass and wrote a letter to the president saying, hey, we'll do it here at Fairmount.
Kirk contacted Walter Camp, who was known as the father of American football, who convened a meeting at Princeton University to formalize the rules for this groundbreaking game. On Christmas Day 1905, before a crowd of 110 fans, Fairmont College faced Washburn University. The first several minutes of the game were uneventful, but then with just moments left in the first half, Fairmont's fullback Bill Davis threw a forward pass to right end Art Solter. Solter caught the ball. History was made. Sports writers were not particularly impressed. The game ended in a 0-0 tie. But the College Football Rules Committee went ahead and legalized the forward pass the following year. Since then, it has made for some of the game's most exciting moments.
By Curry Sexton. Oh my, what a play that was. Bean, Stetson, they're going to keep trying that deep ball, and this time they're on target.
I think there's a little bit of irony that it's a school that dropped its football program in 1986 and has this history in the sport of football.
And here is where Mitchell Sayers comes in. He is Art Solter's great-great-grandson.
There's definitely a sense of pride in there that not only myself, but my brothers and extended family can continue the legacy of playing football.
The story came full circle when we connected with Mitchell's grandfather, Ed Sayers, in rural Ohio.
The significance of it as I got older and putting it together, it really meant an awful lot to hear. Proud that he's my grandfather, you know?
From a brutal game in desperate need of change to a pivotal pass in Wichita, Kansas, the story of football has a surprising local connection. And for Mitchell Sayers, it's a family legacy he's now carrying onto the field. For Positively Kansas, I'm Jim Grayway.
After college, Art Solter went to work in the oil business. He passed away in 1950. Some find it ironic that the school with this great history no longer has a football team. Wichita State ended its football program in 1986. By embracing each season of life with open arms, we allow ourselves to experience its fullness. We learn that age isn't a barrier. It's a testament to all the stories we've lived and the chapters still waiting to be written. Anthony Powell shows us that at age 93, Tilly Schaefers is relearning her A, B, C, D, E, and F.
One and 2 and 3 and 4.
Pretty easy, the melodies that she gives me to play.
At 93, Tilly Schaefers had lived through her fair share of storms.
I'm not bored with life. It's been good to me. I've been through a lot of emergencies. I've had a heart attack. I've had ruptured appendix. I've had a lot of medical problems together. But I made it through, so God must love me.
Or you made it. How about that?
But love prevailed.
I think I like this one.
One day, her sister had to go to a care center and wanted to sell the piano she just purchased.
I think she took lessons, and so I said, don't sell it. So she parked it over here.
It wasn't brand new, but it needed to feel needed.
And I would go out to get my mail every day, and one day I thought, now I should learn how to play that thing.
The old adage, you're never too old to learn. 1 and she can't.
Start over.
The notes uneven and halting.
And 3 and 4. It's on B. Second finger. She was willing to learn, and you start with middle C on the piano. Okay, wow, here we go. Good job. Because she's eager and she's ready to learn.
Well, I've been practicing.
Well, I can tell.
It takes practice every day.
To make sure.
And you know the old adage, practice makes perfect. It's perfect practice makes perfect.
Growing more confident with each scale.
Where's B flat?
I know when I made a mistake, so I can go back and correct it.
Uh-oh, what happens here?
Oh, I dropped down.
Yep, you drop down.
Down, so where do I go?
There, you're right. 1, rest. Okay, and you learn that there's 7 letters, C, D, E.
Listening to the melody to see if I'm hitting the right notes.
F, G, A. Okay, what's our key?
Key, C.
Put your thumb on middle C, and then you'll be able to find the right note. 2, 3. Then it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all over again, all up and down the piano.
I knew I had a teacher here in town. I didn't know if she would accept me or not, but
Well, I'll tell you what,
she did.
I had given lessons to younger people for so many years, and I retired from that. And now that I have a retired school teacher, and then Tilly came along and she wanted to take lessons, and she's 93 years old, and how could I turn her down?
There was something enchanting about the simple act of pressing the keys.
What do you do with ABCs? You have to learn them. I wasn't a very good student. I wasn't very smart, but I made my grades.
Julie, you also learn your lines and spaces, E, G, B, D, F, A in the treble clef.
Tilly learned that learning the piano
4, now together.
wasn't just about the music.
I can tell right away that, that I'm not on the right melody. But it's just fun. It's fun. Gives you something to do,
The once empty afternoons are now filled with beautiful notes.
My back's getting pretty bad, and so I can sit here and play the piano.
3,
Her music a testament to her resilience
3, 4.
and the beauty of embracing life at any age.
I'm having
This is
fun
5.
with it.
1 and 2 and 1.
Just like people, some buildings become more significant with age. Such is the case of the Cimarron Hotel. Its historic importance has grown as the stories of the Wild West have become legendary. Jim Grayway paid a visit to this western Kansas landmark, said to be haunted by some pretty notorious characters of yesteryear.
Out in western Kansas, the ghosts of the Wild West continue to intrigue those who live and visit the town of Cimarron. Located 20 miles west of Dodge City, Cimarron was a popular hangout in the late 1800s for ruffians and cowboys.
When Wyatt Earp said, "It's time for you boys to get out of Dodge," it was one horse day's ride to the Cimarron Hotel where they could get sober, they could get cleaned up, they could fix their black eyes, and they could go back in a more sensible fashion.
This 32-room, 3-story hotel hosted such notorious and legendary figures as gunfighter Luke Short. Dodge City newspaper publisher Nicholas B. Klain built it in 1886. At the time, it was called the New West Hotel, offering first-class accommodations and cutting-edge design.
Obviously, there were people who understood that Kansas could be as good as any place in the world, maybe even Paris.
The Cimarron Hotel is designed in a style of architecture called Second Empire. Now, what makes Second Empire is the roof, and it is that steep-pitched initial face, and then it slopes back, so that it's a 2-stage process with big dormers along it that basically turns attic space into livable, usable space with a high ceiling and windows and so forth, but it's technically an attic. It becomes, in the 1860s and 70s, a very popular, elegant style.
Perhaps not what people expected in a small, dusty, wild cowboy town like Cimarron, which literally went to war with the neighboring town of Ingalls to decide which would be the county seat.
I think about the fact of how much of our history we dismiss, and particularly this corner of Kansas. We were the last 17 counties to incorporate in Kansas, so we lobbed off the territory that became eastern Colorado when our counties formed. And I think that much of that, particularly that Old West history, people tend to think, well, that was just fictional Hollywood 1950s Westerns history. But this was the real history.
Owner Kathleen Holt has faithfully kept the history of the Cimarron Hotel alive. She has owned it since 1977.
So I didn't have a dream. My ex-husband had the dream. So he bought the hotel actually one day over lunch, and I came sort of kicking and screaming until I did the research to get the hotel listed on the National Register. And when I realized how few remaining buildings there were of this historical period, and sitting in here, I have to tell you, I fell in love with the building.
In addition to some name changes through the years, previous owners did some remodeling. However, much of the hotel was still original when Holt took over, including the rug in the lobby, which has been here since 1886.
Cimarron Hotel, the most magical place you could ever go into. When you walk into that front door, even before you walk in, you know it's special, because here it is way out in western Kansas. It's a very big building. In 1886, nothing was around it. And then it has this mansard roof. Wow, when I looked at that, I thought, it's the Louvre. We had sophisticated people in Kansas. And clear out west of Dodge, you walk into that foyer. When I walked into it, I was just hit smack in the face with how much humanity was there. In every way you looked, it reminded you of a past that, to a certain extent, she has collected herself and put all those photos and those drawings, and she's made those rooms into both rooms that people could use today and rooms that people could have used 100 years ago. And I love the hallways, those long hallways, and they creak and they kind of wave, and she's not going to change anything.
I guess I'm just crazy because I think of what it takes to live in and maintain a hotel. People have said to me, when did you finish? Oh, you never finish. You never finish. The wallpaper lasts a long time, but the building settles. It's part of the climate of this country. When you have big droughts like we have, the dirt packs unevenly. One person described the hotel as the most wonderful place with not a straight line in the building. To sit in the lobby in the winter when it's cold out and the radiators clinking a little bit, or even to walk down the halls with the creaky halls, which of course a 3-story building has creaks and things like that. You just think, how many creaks over 140 years?
Creaks from the footsteps of a gunslinger or a marshal, a traveling salesman peddling patent medicine, or a dance hall queen spending the night before catching the next stagecoach. Such characters are all long gone. But the Cimarron Hotel helps keep alive the history of their era, an era that tamed the Kansas countryside and the American West, and still entertains us with bigger-than-life tales of drama and adventure.
The Cimarron Hotel is among the many places featured in the PBS Kansas documentary series, Historic Buildings of Kansas. You can get the DVD collection of the series by going to kpts.org or calling PBS Kansas during regular business hours. From the Wild West to the wild of the woods, where life can be a daily struggle to survive, Mike Blair shows us what life is like for the Kansas bobwhite, which does its best to avoid hungry creatures in need of a meal.
The cheery spring call that gives the bobwhite its name is familiar to most heartlanders. This quail is a prized game bird, living roughly throughout the eastern half of the U.S. Plump, wary, and well-colored to hide in its surroundings, it prefers habitats where grasslands meet open woodlands. It likes short grass situations and is well known as a prairie dweller in the western half of its range. The bobwhite is a ground bird, seldom seen in trees. It's a speedy runner and, where possible, escapes danger by fleeing on foot. But it's also a fast and powerful flyer, bursting from cover in explosive eruptions. Normal flight is usually limited to short distances between food and roosting cover. Male and female bob whites are similar in size, but slightly different colored. Males have bold black and white facial markings. Females have buff-colored faces that better blend into nesting cover. Except for nesting season, bob whites move in groups called coveys. Coveys feed and roost together, utilizing many pairs of eyes to watch for danger. These birds are tasty and a favorite prey of bird hawks, bobcats, and even man. As they feed, at least a few birds are always on sentry. This changes moment to moment as the covey travels. The bobwhite's coloration is perfect camouflage for winter grasses. That's important since thin vegetation after the lush growth of summer makes them easier to spot. Their first line of defense is to freeze in place, letting mottled feathers blend them into backgrounds. Only when discovery is imminent will they flee. Quail feed on a variety of foods, picking seeds, berries, and waste grains from crop fields. They also eat insects and small arthropods, scratching through duff to find protein at the soil surface. Main feeding periods are morning and late afternoon. But the birds constantly peck edibles whenever they find them. Watching these shy game birds court, fight, and nest is always rewarding. Hens nest several times each summer and ground nest near openings like roads or fields. Clutch size is large, up to 20 eggs or more. But in drought, hatchlings can be few. In early fall, bobwhites join into social groups of more than 20 birds. These move back and forth as they encounter other coveys. Eventually, the average wintering covey pairs down to about a dozen quail. Good habitat is essential in helping bobwhites survive the winter, and those that make it ensure each spring is a new chapter for these amazing birds. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Have a question, comment, or story idea? Send us an email at positivelykansas@kpts.org. That's our address. We always love hearing from you. I'm Sierra Scott. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.